Hello, and welcome to Anime Audio Commentary. Today I'll be commenting on episode 19 of Code Geass. If you'd like to watch along, then start watching now. So last we left off, everybody was at, I guess a sort of a standoff where they were all pointing guns at each other, and then a hitherto unmentioned third party came in and blew everyone up. So, either Suzaku here has passed on and gone to the afterlife, or something else happened. The fact that he doesn't remember is not particularly encouraging. So we've already seen that Lelouch is in a similar position being on this island, but the question is, are they all on the same island, and, what's the deal with that? I mean, it seems like they are, for all intents and purposes, stranded. Most of their technology is gone. Suzaku's mentioning he doesn't have communications. Ooh, so this is interesting for Kalen to be bathing and all that, but, ooh, yeah, that's a revelation that, she is a Black Knight and all that. So, man, I guess good on Suzaku for, not holding back, just throwing her like that, but, I guess the question is, from his perspective, is this is this real or what, It seems like it was a bit of an unforced error just to spill the beans saying, I'm Japanese, I'm a Black Knight and all that. Oh well, what are you gonna do, really? So I find it interesting that Euphemia is also here. So I guess everybody somehow got blasted to this island. Because, last we saw Schneizel Il Britannia, or whatever his name was, he basically just glassed the whole thing. I was wondering how people would get out of this, but it seems like we're not really going to get any answers. Ooh. So Suzaku's being intelligent here, basically deducing that no one really knows who Zero is, that, if Kalen did know, she would perhaps react differently. And I guess Lelouch has stumbled into something handy. He could capture Euphemia, but on the other hand, she seems to have deduced his identity, which is a bit concerning. I feel like maybe he should do something about that. Maybe he doesn't necessarily want to gun her down, but I don't know. She certainly seems like a loose end. Too loose an end to be taken off your helmet like this. I mean, I guess the idea maybe is he can play on her sympathies, seeing as how she's like, generally speaking, pretty mild-mannered and kind. But I guess the question is, how did they end up on an entirely different island when it seemed like they were just getting blasted by a giant laser? Oh, that's another thing. Cornelia apparently doesn't know anything about this, and, boy howdy, I think she's liable to be upset. Man, so, more questions with no real answers. So the weapon was called a Hadron Cannon, which I think is, meant deliberately to invoke the idea of the Large Hadron Collider. You know, a particle accelerator, an atom smasher. And, those do weird things. Particle physics are very bizarre. So, I guess the idea is that maybe firing this untested weapon would really just sort of teleport people, then atomize them. So at the very least, Schneisel seems to be like a reasonably honorable guy, notwithstanding the fact that he just blasted everyone. You know, like he seems to have some degree of like nobility, kind of like Euphemia. Because Cornelia was much more bloodthirsty, as was Clovis, but this guy seems to have more of like a noble bearing about him, which, that's kind of refreshing, I suppose, even if it may only be a front. Huh. So, okay, so he managed to basically, like, talk someone down, And he does seem to be saddened by everything that happened. I guess from his perspective, he thinks everyone's dead, which, it's no real good outcome. Huh. Okay, so Euphemia played Lelouch then. She basically got him to take off the helmet on a hunch. Man. She is offering up some intel that, Cornelia doesn't listen to her. I do find it very interesting that these two have much more of a history than we would have been led to believe. Like, I mean, maybe they only are passing acquaintances, but... Huh. I guess it seems like, if nothing else, Euphemia isn't an immediate enemy of Lelouch. She's probably sympathetic to his plight. But interestingly enough, she's not certain about whether or not he's Zero. So... Okay, he's being, like, kind of coy about it, but I guess the idea is that maybe you can, get out of this situation with a neat little lie. Although I guess the other question is, he could always Geass her, right? Like, this might be beyond the pale from his perspective. He might be unwilling to do something like that. But, I don't think that's a card you should take off the table at this point. Like, initially, he was unwilling to do that to Suzaku too, but, at the end of the previous episode, he opened that ice slot. Yeah, I guess that is something else. There may be a possibility that this is all the result of a Geass. I mean, I find that a bit unlikely, admittedly, but... Well, no, I guess it doesn't make sense seeing as how he's already Geassed himself and Kallen. It wouldn't make sense for everyone to have the same, collective hallucination. Now, Euphemia is going to forage for, like, fruits and things to eat. That strikes me as being a particularly bad idea for having the Crown Princess wander around this island. I don't know much about the wildlife, but I feel like someone as sheltered as her should probably not just start rooting around. So things are getting interesting. You know, the rest of the Black Knights, they're sort of torn on whether or not to cut loose while the getting's good or try and find Zero. And, you know, realistically, without him, like, what can they really do on their own? I feel like they just sort of fall apart. But I do find it very telling that it's Colonel Toto who's saying, yeah, no, we should get out of here while we still can. Whereas the others are more loyal. So I do find it interesting that it is the alleged traitor here who's pushing so hard for finding Lelouch. Essentially the idea being that, like, yes, the Black Knights have impressive results, but those results are entirely the result of Zero. You know, we need him. Without him, we're just a ragtag group of losers. And I guess C2, you know, she's being all interesting again, too. It's interesting that they view her the way they do, I guess. You know, because we still don't really know too much about her. You know, she does seem pretty sure that Lelouch is still alive, and I guess, you know, we know he is, supposedly, but how she knows that is, interesting. You know, is it mainly suspicion, or does she have an actual way of knowing? Ooh, okay. So I guess it's just fruit and vegetables for dinner, huh? This presents an interesting dichotomy in that Lelouch, who is, I guess, implied to be more competent, is paling in comparison to Suzaku, who has actual survival skills here. I think it's also interesting that neither of these groups know of the other, you know? I can only imagine the conflict will reignite if they were to catch sight of each other. But, you know, that's interesting too, because they're essentially in alliances of convenience, you know. Suzaku and Callan disagree ideologically, but, you know, if they were to come across Lelouch, surely Callan would do something, right? So I guess this is, if nothing else, an opportunity for interesting dialogue to take place. You know, because Callan is so fixated on restoring Japan to what it was, and so is Suzaku to a degree, but oh dear. For him to just lay that out like that, that's something alright, and I guess that proves he does care about her and wants her to change. You know, he wouldn't just spill his guts to just anybody. But I'm wondering if it's really going to have the effect he wants it to have. So I guess this is another interesting conversation in that Euphemia longs for the past, but the past isn't really something you can return to in this instance, which Lelouch and Suzaku are both aware of for different reasons. Yeah, so here we go. They're exploring their thoughts a bit more, you know. Callan is unwilling to accept the status quo for what it is, and to a degree so is Suzaku, but, you know, he's not willing to do the things they do either. So I guess Callan has a bit of baggage too, that her brother died, I can only assume. Man. So I feel like Euphemia just falling asleep around Lelouch so wantonly, that might not be a good idea. And speaking of not good ideas, there are people searching around using lights and all that. Like, that's a good way to draw attention, and they might not want to do that. I mean, sure, they're the search party and they have nominal superiority in numbers, but I don't know. I feel like the idea is that Zero's here as well. You might want to be a bit more careful and circumspect with how you do things. And speaking of being careful, for somebody who's taken a hostage, Suzaku's not really watching her too much. I feel like it's kind of his good nature coming back to bite him, because if he was being really careful, he'd probably make her walk in front. Although I don't blame him for not doing that morally. So it's interesting that Schneizel is saying my father's interested in this stuff, and it's seemingly ancient ruins. Which, that's interesting, especially seeing as how there's some symbology related to the Geass present, which, it really makes you think that it's got a good deal more significance than we've been led to believe so far. I guess the question is, to what end is all this stuff here? Was it an ancient civilization that's died out, or... I don't know. Ooh. What's Lelouch's game here? Is he trying to confirm information? Because, he already knows that Suzaku is, Euphemia's knight. Is he just trying to, gain this information as Lelouch rather than as Zero? Oh. Plot's about to get real thick. Yeah, so now everybody has to, switch sides and, re-engage the standoff. It's interesting that Lelouch is like, hey, Euphemia, follow my lead here. I mean, I guess it's interesting. He has all the cards, Euphemia knows Lelouch wouldn't do anything incorrectly. He probably would, but, he also thinks his hostage is secured when that's not really the case. So I guess the question is, does Lelouch actually do something harsh? Who knows, really? Now what have we here? I feel like this wasn't a conscious use of the Geass that provoked this, but rather Lelouch's mere presence. And, I mean, that's interesting for a whole host of reasons, especially because he was unwilling to use the Geass on Suzaku, except under those previous extreme circumstances. Man, it really is crazy how he's just jumped out of the frying pan and landed right in the fire. Oh dear. So I guess, maybe he can escape by commandeering that nightmare frame, but man. I guess it is rather fortunate that Suzaku is stunned into silence. Don't really know why, but I get the feeling we're going to find out, and it's not going to be something good. So, it really does seem like an interesting stroke of luck where Lelouch has managed to commandeer an experimental nightmare frame, the Gawain, and he's also presented with this opportunity to, well, kill Schneizel if he so decides. Because, like, that guy, being one of the princes, surely he knows something. But for Suzaku to be mesmerized by something, you know, that's interesting, seeing as how I wouldn't think he would know anything about this whole Geass business. So that's interesting. You know, for the Gawain to be able to fly, that seems like a new dimension to Nightmare Frames. I mean, sure, it might only be a prototype, but it is something, you know. It's pretty nifty. It's probably not good that they've lost it. Ooh. Okay, so Suzaku's in hot water again for insubordination. I guess it does make a little bit of sense. He was probably acting outside of his authority, but at the same time, like, I don't know, things got pretty tense. Okay. So it seems like maybe Lelouch has used the Geass. And the Geass told him to live, which I don't know how you can really command something like that. That's pretty open-ended. Oh. Okay, so Lelouch has essentially caused this little insubordination. Wow. That's unfortunate. So I guess this is kind of fortunate for Lelouch in that Suzaku's reputation has been thoroughly tarnished, but man. So if that weren't enough, it seems like the Chinese Federation is attacking, but oh no. Ooh, plot's real thick now. Alright, well that's it for this episode. If you've enjoyed it, then by all means, tune in for the next one. See you, Space Cowboy.